The mail came on a Tuesday, which is funny because I used to love Tuesdays. My grandmother always said Tuesday was the quietest day of the week. Not the drag of Monday, not the anticipation of Wednesday, just a plain, unremarkable stretch of hours where nothing particularly bad could happen. I believed her for 31 years. Then I opened an envelope I wasn't supposed to see, and Tuesdays became the day everything changed. I was home early from work. I'm a physical therapist at a rehabilitation clinic about 20 minutes from the house. My house, the one my grandmother left me when she passed 3 years ago. A clean 4-bedroom craftsman on a corner lot in a quiet neighborhood outside Columbus. She'd paid it off entirely by the time she died. No mortgage, no liens, just the deed, transferred to my name, notarized and recorded with the county. It was the only thing of real value she had, and she gave it to me because, as she wrote in the letter tucked inside her Bible, I was the one who showed up. My husband knew this. He knew it when we started dating. He knew it when we got married 2 years ago. He knew it the day we moved in together, when he carried boxes through the front door and kissed me in the kitchen and said he felt like the luckiest man in the world. I think about that kiss sometimes now, and I wonder when it stopped being true, or if it ever was. That Tuesday, I walked in through the side door and dropped my keys on the counter. I could hear him on the phone in the living room, which wasn't unusual. He works in sales, or he used to. He'd been vague about a career change he was supposedly pursuing, something involving investment opportunities with his brother. I'd asked about it twice. Both times, he'd waved me off with the same tight smile and said I didn't need to worry about it. I should have pushed harder. I know that now. I was pouring myself a glass of water when I heard him say the address. Our address. My grandmother's address. The one I grew up spending summers at. The one I still sometimes catch myself calling Grandma's house, even though it's been mine for 3 years. He was reading it out loud. Street, city, zip code. The way you do when you're filling out paperwork or confirming something over the phone. I stood very still. Yeah, the comps in that area are running between 380 and 410, he said. I think we can list at 395 and move it fast. Spring market's about to open up. I set my glass down on the counter so quietly I didn't even hear it touch. List it. He said, list it. I walked to the doorway of the living room. He had his back to me, laptop open on the coffee table, a yellow legal pad covered in numbers resting on his knee. He didn't hear me come in. I watched him for a moment. The easy way he was leaning back, feet up, talking about my house like it was a business asset he was liquidating, and something inside me went very, very cold. Hold on, he said, and I thought he'd heard me, but he was just switching the phone to his other ear. My brother's going to be the co-listing agent, so we keep the commission internal. Clean deal. His brother, who got his real estate license 18 months ago and had been struggling to close anything significant. His brother, who I had never particularly liked and who had never particularly liked me. I stepped back into the kitchen before he could turn around. My hands were shaking, but my mind was shockingly clear. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I did what I always do when something frightens me. I got methodical. I picked up my phone and searched the county auditor's website, typed in our address. The property record loaded in about 4 seconds. Owner of record, my name. Just mine, exactly as it had been since my grandmother died. He was not on the deed. He had never been on the deed. I had never added him, not because I was suspicious of him, but because my attorney had advised me at the time of inheritance to keep inherited property in my name only for tax and liability purposes, and I had followed that advice without overthinking it, which meant that legally, whatever he was planning, he couldn't do it without my signature. But the fact that he was planning it at all, that he had been on the phone with a real estate agent, discussing list prices, talking about spring market, without a single word to me, that told me everything I needed to know about the kind of man I had married. I heard him laugh at something the agent said, a comfortable, easy laugh. I went upstairs, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at the wall for about 30 seconds. Then I picked up my phone and called my cousin, who is a paralegal in Cincinnati. She picked up on the second ring. "I need you to recommend a family law attorney," I said. "Someone good. Someone fast." A beat of silence. "How bad is it?" "I don't know yet," I said. "But I think I need to know my options before I say anything to him." She gave me 2 names. I wrote them both down. When I came back downstairs, he was off the phone, closing his laptop. He looked up when he heard me on the stairs and smiled like nothing had happened, like I hadn't just overheard the whole thing. "Hey, you're home early," he said. "Slow afternoon," I said. I smiled back. I am not proud of how easy it was. We ate dinner together that night. He talked about a podcast he'd been listening to, something about passive income and real estate markets. I said, in the right places, and refilled my water glass and thought about the names my cousin had given me. That night, lying in the dark, I listened to him breathe and tried to understand how you get from luckiest man in the world to listing at $395 without telling your wife. I couldn't find the path. Maybe there wasn't one. Maybe I just hadn't been paying close enough attention. I called the first attorney the next morning for my car in the clinic parking lot before my shift started. Her name was Miss Okafor. She had a calm, precise way of speaking that I found immediately reassuring. I told her what I'd heard. She asked me a series of questions. Was my name the only one on the deed? Yes. Had he ever had me sign any documents related to the property? Not that I was aware of. Did we have a prenuptial agreement? No. Was the property acquired before the marriage? Yes, through inheritance. "Okay," she said. "Here's what you need to understand. If your name is the sole owner of record, he cannot legally list or sell that property without your signature on the listing agreement and eventually the closing documents. No legitimate transaction can close without that." "What if he forges my signature?" I asked. It felt strange to say out loud. "Like something from a movie." "That's fraud," she said simply. "Criminal fraud. It would void the transaction and expose him and anyone who participated, including the listing agent, to serious legal liability." "His brother is the listing agent," I said. A brief pause. "That complicates things for his brother considerably." She told me what to do. I took notes on the back of a receipt I found in my center console. When I hung up, I sat in the parking lot for another 10 minutes, watching my coworkers filter through the front doors, coffee cups in hand, and I thought about my grandmother standing in that kitchen, teaching me to make biscuits from scratch, telling me that the house would always be mine as long as I took care of it. I drove home that evening with a very clear sense of purpose. I started with the filing cabinet in the office we shared, a small room off the hallway that we'd set up as a joint workspace. His paperwork lived in the right 2 drawers, mine on the left. I'd always respected that division without thinking much about it. I thought about it now. I opened his drawers carefully. I wasn't sure what I was looking for exactly until I found it, a manila folder labeled in his handwriting, "Property Research." Inside was a printed comparative market analysis for our neighborhood, a draft listing agreement with my name already typed into the seller line, just my name. No signature yet, and a handwritten note with the name of the real estate agent he'd been speaking with, along with what appeared to be a timeline. List by March 15. Close by May 1. Proceeds split 60% to investment fund, 40% to transition costs. Transition costs. I photographed every page with my phone. Then I put everything back exactly as I'd found it. In the listing draft, there was a line for seller's signature, blank. He hadn't forged anything yet. He was still in the planning stage. But the fact that he drafted a listing agreement with my name on it without my knowledge, without a single conversation, told me that forgery was exactly where this was heading. I texted Ms. Okafor that night. She called me back within the hour. "He has a draft listing agreement with your name already filled in as the seller," I told her. "Has he asked you to sign anything yet?" "No." "Then we're still in the prevention phase," she said, "which is where we want to be. Here's what I'd like you to do." She walked me through it. The next morning, I drove to the county recorder's office before work and placed a title alert on the property, a service that notifies you by email and text anytime a document is filed against your property. It takes about 10 minutes to set up. The clerk who helped me was cheerful and efficient and had no idea she was one of the most useful people I'd met in a week. I also called my homeowner's insurance company and updated my contact information to my personal cell phone only so that any correspondence would come to me directly. Then I went to work and treated 6 patients and smiled at all of them and drove home and made pasta for dinner and listened to my husband tell me about a conversation he'd had with his brother about timing the market. "Spring is really when you want to move on something like this," he said, twirling linguine onto his fork. "Something like what?" I asked. My voice was perfectly even. "Real estate," he said. "In general, it's just a principle." I nodded. "Makes sense," I said. That weekend, he told me he was going to his brother's place to watch a game. He kissed me on the cheek and left around noon. I gave him 20 minutes, then I called a locksmith. I did not change the locks. Ms. Okafor had advised against that. It could be construed as a lockout, which in Ohio has its own legal complications even when it's your own property. What I did instead was have a secondary deadbolt installed on the office door with a key only I had. All of the documents in that room, my deed, my grandmother's will, my insurance policies, every piece of paper with my name on it, I moved into a fireproof lockbox that I stored in the trunk of my car. I also scheduled an appointment at the county recorder's office for the following Wednesday to make absolutely certain that no documents had been filed without my knowledge. The title alert was in place, but I wanted to see it with my own eyes. He came home from his brother's in a good mood. He made popcorn and we watched a movie and he fell asleep on the couch before it ended. I sat next to him in the dark watching the credits roll and thought, I know something you don't know. The call came on a Thursday. I was in between patients when my phone buzzed, not a call, a text from the title alert service. DOC meant fold against your property. Review Acadian Recorder's quarters office. I stood in the hallway of the clinic reader's office. I stood in the hallway of the clinic and read it twice. I called Ms. Okafor immediately. Then I drove to the recorder's office on my lunch break. What had been filed was not a deed transfer. It was a listing agreement, improperly filed by his brother in what appeared to be an attempt to establish a paper trail of commission claim. It had a signature on the seller line that was not my signature. I have signed my name the same way for 20 years. The loops are specific. The particular way I run the letters together is not something you can replicate from a typed name on a form. "Mrs. Stitt?" Okafor looked at the photograph I sent her and said, "That's a forgery." I sat in my car in the recorder's office parking lot and felt something I can only describe as a profound sadness. Not the crying kind, but the hollow kind. The kind that settles in when you realize that someone looked at you and calculated what they could get away with. I drove back to work. I treated my afternoon patients. I called my cousin on the drive home and told her what had happened, and she was quiet for a long moment and then said, "What do you want to do?" "I want to handle it correctly," I said. "I want there to be no question of who did what." "Then you know what you need to do." I did. That evening, I came home to my husband sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop, the same easy, comfortable posture I'd watched all week, and I sat down across from him. "Can I ask you something?" I said. He looked up. "Sure. Have you been talking to anyone about the house?" Something shifted in his face, barely perceptible, but I'd been watching him for 2 years and I knew every register of that face. "What do you mean?" "I mean a real estate agent. About listing it." A pause. Then he did something that surprised me even then. After everything, he smiled. Not a caught red-handed smile. A dismissive one, like I was a child who'd stumbled onto something she didn't understand. "I'd been doing some research," he said. "It's not a big deal. I was going to talk to you about it." "When?" "When I had more information." "You have a draft listing agreement," I said, "with my name typed in as the seller." His jaw tightened. "And someone filed that agreement at the county recorder's office," I said. with a signature on the seller line that is not my signature." He said nothing. "That's fraud," I said. The words sat between us like something physical. "That's criminal fraud, and your brother is potentially liable as the listing agent." He stood up. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I've spoken with an attorney," I said. "I know exactly what I'm talking about. You're being dramatic. Don't." My voice was so quiet that he actually stopped. I don't raise my voice often. When I lower it, people tend to pay attention. "Don't tell me I'm being dramatic. You were planning to sell my house, the house my grandmother left me, without telling me, without my consent. And then someone forged my signature on a legal document." He looked at me for a long moment. I could see him cycling through options, explanations, deflections, apologies. Then he chose one I hadn't anticipated. He sat back down and leaned forward, elbows on the table, and dropped his voice to something quiet and almost reasonable sounding. "We need money," he said. "My brother's investment fund needs capital. If we sell the house, we could get into something that actually grows. We could use the proceeds to rent somewhere and still come out ahead. I was trying to build something for us." "For us," I repeated. "Yes. You were building something for us," I said, "by planning to sell my inherited property without mentioning it to me, having a listing agreement drafted with my name on it without asking me, and then filing a forged document with the county recorder. The filing was a mistake." "Which of those things was for us?" I asked. He had no answer for that. I stood up. "I'd like you to stay somewhere else tonight," I said. "I'll be in touch through my attorney." He stared at me. "This is my house, too." "It's not," I said, and I said it gently because I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. "It has never been your house. It's in my name. It was my grandmother's, and I am asking you, very clearly, to leave." He didn't move for almost a full minute. Then he picked up his phone, texted someone, his brother probably, and walked upstairs. I heard him moving around up there for a while. When he came down with a bag, he didn't look at me. At the door, he stopped. "You're making a mistake," he said. "I've made a few this week," I said. "That's not one of them." He left. I locked the door behind him, the original lock, not even the new one, and stood in my grandmother's kitchen, in the house she'd paid off over 40 years so it could come to me free and clear, and breathed. Miss Strain, Okafor, filed a complaint with the county prosecutor's office the next week, citing the forged document. She also contacted the real estate licensing board regarding his brother's involvement. He hired his own attorney and denied any knowledge of the filing, claiming his brother had misunderstood the scope of his authority. It remains to be seen whether that holds. I filed for divorce 34 days after that Tuesday. There are things I wish I had done differently. I wish I had pushed harder when he was vague about the investment opportunities. I wish I had paid closer attention to the way he talked about the house, not as our home, but as an asset with a market value. I wish I had understood sooner that someone can sleep next to you every night and still be running a calculation you know nothing about. But here's what I also know. My grandmother's house is still mine. The deed still has my name on it, exactly as it did the day she died, exactly as it did the day I got married, exactly as it did the Tuesday I came home early and overheard a phone call that changed everything. I walked through every room last Sunday morning with a cup of coffee, the way I used to do when I was a kid visiting her for the summer. The wood floors that creak in the same spots they always have. The window in the kitchen that sticks in humidity. The corner of the living room where she kept her reading chair and where I now keep mine. She always said the house would be mine as long as I took care of it. I'm taking care of it.